Hi, my name is Tiffany Cruikshank. I'm here in Seattle with Seattle Yoga News, and this is Lulu, and thank you for joining us. I guess my journey began when I was about 14, and I was actually a troublemaker. My parents sent me away on a wilderness program, and one of my guides was an herbalist, and he would take me out during the day on plant walks. And I think as a teenage girl, it was really empowering just to learn how to survive. You know, I think you're so uncomfortable in your skin as a teenager, and so learning how to survive, but then learning how to heal was really intriguing to me. And I remember going home and having this room full of like jars of herbs that I'd collected and potions, and I remember getting really excited when someone would be sick, which was not, it was just exciting to like make potions and make things for them and help them out, and I really loved it. And I think from that point on I knew I wanted to go into holistic health of some sort, and so I continued to apprentice with an herbalist. And around the same time I remember seeing a little sign that said yoga and a phone number, and I eventually just remembered it. And you know, I had to have my mom drive me, and she would take me, and it was this little class in a chiropractor's office with women who were probably mostly in their 60s. But there was just something about it. I was always really athletic, so you know, the physicality drew me in, but really it was more than that. You know, it was something I think that I couldn't really identify, but just those moments, I think, as a teenager of feeling comfortable in my skin for moments and connecting to breath. And my teacher eventually invited me to practice in his home, and I didn't know at the time, but it was Ashtanga. And I remember walking into this little room off of his garage with maybe fit like 4 or 5 people, and just the breath and just the sound of it really intrigued me. And the physicality was beautiful too, I think, as a kid. And so later on, eventually I kept practicing yoga. I fell really in love with yoga and kept practicing it. I graduated early at about 16 and went off to college, and there really wasn't any yoga. And so I decided I really enjoyed kind of teaching little bits to friends and family, so I decided to go and become a teacher. And I haven't looked back. I kept teaching yoga. I started when I was 16, and I started apprenticing with an acupuncturist and really fell in love with the art of Chinese medicine, and knew I wanted to go into some sort of holistic health, and kind of looked at Ayurveda and looked at naturopathic medicine. I looked at Western medicine too, and really just fell in love with the art of Chinese medicine, of really looking at the whole individual and using the symptoms together to kind of look at the person as a whole. And so I went and did my pre-med and finished up my pre-med, and then I went straight into Chinese medicine school and really just fell in love with the art of practicing Chinese medicine. And afterwards I went on to get a specialty in sports medicine, and I actually got one in women's health too. I just haven't really gotten a chance to use it much because I don't stay in one place long enough. But I went through a short phase of working with fertility patients, which was really fun. But most of what I do is sports medicine and orthopedics, and you know, I think you see that a lot in yoga medicine. Yoga medicine came around, I mean, it's really just coming into form now, but it's been something that I've been playing with over the past decade or so, working with patients. I was thinking about it the other day, I've seen over 25,000 patients in the past decade. And you know, at the beginning of my career as an acupuncturist, I saw a lot of patients who were yoga students. You know, some of them, you know, obviously sometimes we hurt ourselves in yoga, but I think a lot of it too is more that yoga really uncovers a lot of what's there. You know, we can kind of hide a lot of illness and injury and things just sitting at our desk all day, and yoga really opens us up and uncovers things that are lurking. And so I saw a lot of patients who were yogis, and I noticed that they responded really fast to my treatments, and I was like, oh, I love working with yoga people because they get better so much quicker. And then all of a sudden, it actually took me a couple years, but all of a sudden like a bright light went off, and it was like, oh, well, maybe I should use this with my other patients. And so I started doing what I called yoga prescriptions with my other patients, and giving them just a few poses, giving them a little prescription to do on their own, and I noticed that they got better faster as well. And so ever since then, I've really kind of been playing with and fine-tuning the system of interweaving the Chinese medicine with the yoga, and really developing something that's powerful for my patients and my students. And now, you know, the past 5 or 6 years really training teachers to be able to do that. And it's something that's really meaningful to me and really powerful. I think For me, yoga really is a form of medicine, and so one of our big movements now is really just raising awareness that it can be used as a form of medicine. I mean, I think there's a lot of advice for new people. I think some of it is just the obvious, is one, looking for a teacher that really clicks with you, but then also really listening to your own internal knowledge. I think so many times in our world we kind of disempower ourselves by believing that maybe we're not smart enough or we don't know enough, and that we have to learn a certain amount. Even as a teacher, like, I have to get to a certain place that I know so much to be able to help my students, but the reality is we have so much innate knowledge and wisdom built into us to really know. It's just sometimes we bypass that, but to be able to listen, and we say this all the time in yoga, is to really be able to listen to your body, and know when to stop. We have a lot of those signals that are built in, and it's just when we get caught up in it. Yoga's become kind of one of those things that most of us are aware of, to get in shape and to get the yoga body or the pretty pictures on Instagram, and it's easy to get kind of caught up in that. And I think it's important to kind of remember, I think this is something that yoga medicine for me is really about, is not so much always, we have this 1,000-hour training that trains people up to really understand it, but also just how we approach it. The moment I step on my mat, there's this sense of acknowledging that this is a form of medicine. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's just restorative or yin or meditation, which are powerful tools, but that it can be any form of or any form of yoga can really be a form of medicine if I just approach it in that way. I think for yoga teachers, my advice would be, if there's something that you really love, that you feel really passionate about, is to really stick to it. And, it does take hard work, and I'm not trying to minimize the effort I put into it. I think I put a ton of effort into it, but I never really expected that it would be this end point. It wasn't that I had the effort in it with this fixation of this end point. It was more just, this is what I love doing. I'm going to put my heart and soul into it. I think if you, as a teacher, have something that you're really passionate about, and you have something unique to share that people need to learn, there's a need for it, then eventually things will happen. People will catch on. So I think it's just the ability to stay with it and be really dedicated that is, it's important, because it's easy to get tired, in this world. It's easy to get distracted by so many other things. And as a yoga teacher, we constantly have to keep ourselves inspired. We constantly have to stay true to, like, my job as a teacher, utmost and important and foremost, and is to really keep myself healthy and keep myself inspired. Not that obviously I get injured, obviously I have times when I get sick, but to constantly refine my own practice, my own body, my own person as a service, to give that experience to the community. I've always been really intrigued by Gandhi. I mean, I think it's such a common one for people to say, but we used to go, or we go every few years and take a teacher training down to Kerala, and we always go and practice by his ashes, and I think it's just a powerful place for me. And it's really interesting too, because all of the locals, all of the Indians are like excited and snapping, like, what are they doing? But that's always been a really powerful place for me. That's always kind of probably the highlight of the trip. There's just something there that's really intriguing for me. I mean, I think as a yoga teacher, you're required to wear a lot of different hats. And, nowadays, when you want to do things like travel and teach or run teacher trainings, you have to have some marketing and some business behind it. I think one of the things that's always been really important to me, and we haven't put a lot of effort into marketing, but is to really constantly aligning with what's important to me and what's of integrity. I think it's really easy nowadays to kind of on, social media or whatever it is, to do what we think people want us to do, or to, post things that we think, are wanted. And one thing I've always been held really strongly to is posting and really sharing things that are meaningful to me. And not just because, they look pretty, or because, I like pretty things too, but to really hold true to my integrity and to what's important to creating the depth of what I want to see out there, which is different for everyone. There's some people who really want to create something very different. I'm very much like the nerdy, brainy I usually, if I have my time to myself, I'm like curled up with a book, reading. I'm not like the one who's the social butterfly out, chatting. And I have my friends and I have my fun, but I'm definitely more of an introvert. So the marketing and that stuff has always been a little bit of like, how do you balance doing something that feeds you with still also creating the awareness and the business around it. And I think for me it always comes back to, what is your passion? What do you uniquely have to share? And how do you align that with integrity in a way that's meaningful for you so that you can commit to that over time? I think as soon as we kind of sell out to what we think the people want, we find ourselves getting really tired. We find ourselves getting really burnt out. And whenever I get tired, whenever I start to get burnt out, I just have to remember, like, why am I here? Like, what's my purpose? I have something I want to share. I have something that's meaningful, and then it all disappears. Just show up. And I feel like, I spent the first 2 decades of my yoga life really studying and like in books and school and patience and working so much just learning. And now it's just fun to see, the next couple of decades as like really just an offering, of really putting that back out into the community so that hopefully the whole rest of the yoga community can grow and thrive as well.